Okay, so today's agenda is going to be like we will try to understand a few concepts or Salesforce platform features which will help us to add some business logic, which will help us to add some automations in our application, and that will help us to improve the overall user experience. Now, as a part of this app, we will go through validation rules, roll up summary fields, formula fields, workflow approval process, and we'll try to understand when do you use these features under which context, right? So we'll start with the validation rules and we'll see where we are at the end of this session today. So when we go into the validation rule, um, let's try to understand a few uh, examples here using the same travel approval app. And what what it says is that and I will try to add some context within it, and maybe I can refer this background in this module, these background information of our app, why we are going to add some validations rules in these applications. Okay. um, so just try to recollect whatever you have built as a part of this travel approval app so far, and then I will that will help us to understand the concept. So what it says is that if you recall the data model, let me recall, open up the data model here. So if I try to let me open up and also open up a notepad. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use schema builder, which we have seen this in the past session, and trying to just uh, help us understand what is how does the data model for this travel approval look like. Because when we have to build some automations, formula field validations rules, right, workflow rules, approval process, it is very important for us to understand the relationships between the object where we are going to build these features, and also how does this given object is related to other objects. Okay, so if you see the model here, right, on the top, department is our parent object, and it has this lookup relationship to travel approval. So one department has multiple travel approval records. You see this three branches, so it means one department can have multiple travel approval, and one travel approval can have multiple expense item. Okay, so between department and travel approval there is lookup relationship. Between travel approval and expense there is master detail relationship. We have gone through this concept, but you can always ask me to recap any concept if you are not clear about it. Okay, so now this is about the data model. So the requirement is that uh, if the user are supposed um, to check the out of state box every time they submit an out of box travel request, wouldn't it be nice if this step is done automatically? So what it says is that when we try to create a travel approval, right, let's say for IT department, a person is from IT department and person is trying to raise a travel approval request. So travel approval is in the related list side of IT or department. Click on open. You see that you add the start date, you add the end date, And then if the state is, I'm taking an example of let's say New Delhi. So this company is in New Delhi, and if the employee is taking a travel approval request, so any trip which is outside New Delhi is like out of state, right? Or any trip outside, let's say Texas or London, wherever my office is. So any trip which is outside the state code is out of state. So if I, let's say if I type DL for Delhi, I'm just making a sample example like DL for Delhi. Okay, so if I save it, it we see that, okay, so I've already applied this automations in place, but let me check this out. One thing, there is I have to log in first. Okay, I think I have built this one. So let me switch off the automations because uh, you may not understand at the moment how does. So see, it was outside Delhi, and I had not selected this checkbox, right? Even then it is selecting this. So based on the value in the destination state, the out of the state checkbox is automatically checked. I as a user did not selected this one, right? Let's say if I again go to my department and try to make a travel approval request, and I make it like, which is not DL. So if I save it, you will see that, okay, this is out of state is getting checked. So let me switch off this automation first. Travel approval and process builder. Yeah, here it is. Let me deactivate this. We'll see this how to write validation rule, but I don't want to. And then there is some validations rules as well. Let me mark them inactive also. Okay. Okay, so I'm again taking a step back here. So why do we create a validations rules? Before we go into the practical, let's understand a few important concepts. So if you can see my screen, so validation rule is a point and click automation tool, okay, which is used to validate the data being entered by the user that is saved in the object. Why do we need a validation rule? This is to ensure the data integrity or completeness or the data quality. Okay. Validation rule lets you set up business specific criteria to prevent users from saving invalid data in one or more fields on the form. on the record. Okay, so you might be given some kind of requirement that the user should not be able to enter this kind of data. Okay, should not be able to save this kind of data when they try to save a record. So you need to understand what is that business specific criteria, and then based on that, you can use a validations rule. So if in exam or in certification or in interview, someone asks, someone say that based on certain criteria, the user or the agent or the admin or whoever, that person should not be able to save the record in the database. Okay, so it means some kind of validation is going to happen on the records being entered by the user, right? So the simple answer would be to use a validation rule and stop the users from entering invalid data. Okay, because nobody wants invalid or or inaccurate or wrong data in the database, right? So that's why we need a validation rule. And a validation rule has few things. One is that a validation rule evaluates a formula when a record is saved. So when I say save, it means when you insert or create a record in an object, that means it is being saved in the database. And when, if you are doing some kind of update, right, on the existing records, that is also saving the record in the database. So validation rule will fire when a record is saved in the database. And by save, I mean insert or update. Okay. Now, the validation rule which we write, that will have some kind of criteria, right? And if the criteria are met, it means users will see some kind of error message which we can configure, and the record will not be saved in the database. So if the validation rule criteria is met or is true, so when the user feels something on the record and try to click on save button, right, internally the validation rule will fire. Okay, now the validation rule will collect or will check the record which is being saved by the user, and then based on the criteria which is configured inside the validation rule, it will try to use the record into that validation rule and then see what is the end result, what is the result of the validation rule. If the validation rule criteria is met in the record which is being saved, the user will no will see a error message and the record will not be saved in the database. So unless the user make corrections to the record, the user will not be saved. So you need to display a user friendly message helping the user understand why the user is not able to save the data, so that the user can make corrective actions, correct the data, and then uh, save the data, and finally the record will be saved in the database. So what we understood is that the validation, if the validation rule criteria is met, it means stop the user from or prevent the user from saving the data and throw a meaningful message to the user so that the user can make corrective actions and finally save the data. Now, if the rule criteria is not met, it means the record will be saved. So the rule criteria is for the invalid data. Okay. We set up the rule in such a way which basically points to invalid data. So if the rule criteria is true, it means the data is invalid. If the rule criteria is false or not met, it means the data is valid, and save the record. Okay, so remember this. We'll see through hands-on. Now, we use validation rule to improve data quality by applying conditions, okay, ensuring proper formatting is done, and also enforcing consistency of data in the object. Okay, so the important note is that if this validation rule expression is true, then display a message which is defined, which you can configure. And when writing a validation rule, your condition formula should return true for the error condition. Like I said, if it is true, then throw an error. If it is false, then don't throw an error. So how do you create a validation rule? You can create a validation rule on the objects. So you go to object manager, open up your object, and within the object, you can see, for example, for travel approval, you can see there is a validation rule uh, tab in the left hand side. Okay, so click on this validation rule. It will open up a validation rule page here on the right hand side, and you can see new button on the corner. Okay, I've already created some validation rules, but as you can see, I've deactivated it. So I will create a brand new validation rule for you. Okay. Um, so let's go back to our use case, to our trailhead, and this is our validation rule. We got the idea or the business use case. When do we need a validation rule? To enforce improve the data quality by applying conditions and ensure proper formatting and data consistency can be taken place. Now, now our requirement is that we have to enforce uh, a rule which will prevent, or which will say that the trip end date must always be greater than trip start date. So if you see the travel approval record here, we have trip start date and trip end date, right? So as of now, if you see, if I edit this, trip start date is on 8th of August. Okay. And trip end date is on 1st of September, which is fine. But if I mark my trip end date is, let's say, 1st of June. Okay. Trip is starting on 8th of August and it is ending on 1st, 1st of June, right? So it means end date is in the past and start date is greater than end date. This should not be the case, right? This is invalid data. But as of now, I'm able to save this data, right? Which is incorrect. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, because we have created validation.
Yeah. So we have to apply some kind of validation so that the end date is always greater than or equals to today's date, right?
Yes,
Okay. When do we want to throw an error message? When the end date is less than start date.
less than.
Okay. So if we see this module, you go to setup object manager and then open up your object. Now in the validation rule, if you click on new, it will open up this page to give a meaningful rule name. You can give any name. Okay. And then you can use this box, this text editor, to create some condition. Okay. And that is error condition formula. And if the condition is true, you can throw a error message, and that message, whatever message you configure inside this error message box, that will appear to the user. And now where do you want to display the error message? Top of the page, or below the field where you are applying the validation. Okay. So this is our rule name, trip end date after start date. Okay. Now condition is, if the end date is less than start date, it means it is an invalid data, right? So let's go to our object, travel approval, click on new. Okay, I'm going to use this uh, trip end date after start date. You can give any descriptions if you'd like. And when is our data invalid? So this is how you have to think. The condition which we will write here, right? This condition is for invalid data. Don't most of the people uh, take it wrong that the condition which we write it here is for valid data. No, we have to write the condition for invalid data. And when is our data invalid? When the trip end date is less than trip start date. Okay. So now you have button on the top here, insert field. So we enter our data and the trips end date and trip start date, right? So click on this insert field, and you will see this uh, navigation, this boxes. So we are on travel approval object, okay? And on the right hand side, you will see all the fields on the travel approval, okay? Down below, you will see these are the some system objects, but we are not going to look into that. We have to apply this validation rule on the travel approval object. So let's, and we are going to refer the travel approval fields. So we will select the travel approval object here. On the right side, you will see all the fields for the selected object. Okay. Now, what is the meaning of this angle bracket? You see? So the meaning is
Greater
that,
than and then
yeah, what is the meaning of this angle bracket?
greater than
Say it again, please. Say it loud.
great great greater than.
No, no, no. So try to, so if we select travel approval, this bracket means on the right hand side, it will open up all the fields on this object. Okay. So wherever you see an angle bracket, it means it will open up. You are basically selecting that object. So if I select department here, right? See, it again opens up
It's all the
a section, and these are the fields on department. Okay.
departments.
Other fields, if I select, these are the fields on travel approval. Okay. This is very
Yeah.
important. Um, so this bracket means we are jumping from child object to parent object. So click on the travel approval, you'll see all the fields on the travel approval. When you click on this department, so wherever you see this greater than sign, right, or angle bracket, it means, okay, this is the this is the problem with this Zoom. So there is a limit, and hence I'm talking about purchasing a license, which I will do it later. We have removed. Okay, love it. Fine. But our validation rule is saying that we have to refer fields on the travel approval. So we don't go into these department objects. We will try to see where is our trip end date. This is our trip end date, right? Now we see we have selected trip end date field and click on insert. So if you click on insert, the API name will be entered here. Okay. So any validation rule, any automations which we will do, we will have to work with the API name. Let me open up the field separately and give you an insight. So on the travel approval, if I go to trip end date, right? This is our label. This is what appears to the end user on the record, right? If you go to our record, we see the label, right? But if you go to the object, okay, we can see label, and we can also see the API name, which is this. Now, if you have to work, if you are writing the validation rule or any automations, right? We have to work with, or we have to refer that field with the API name. So if the end date is, now you can use which operator, which is this less than. If the end date is less than start date. Now on the travel approval object, we have to select start date and click on insert. Now our formula is ready. So if the trip end date is less than trip start date, it
It's
means the data is
less than or
invalid.
less than equal to.
Eh, You can write,
Uh,
no, my trip can start today and end as today as well, right? In some cases. So there could be like 1 day trip.
no, actually, I
Yeah.
yes, actually I was going through the. I was talking about trail mix.
Okay, go
That
to,
module actually. That
okay,
module.
let's go to
That
trail mix.
about that module.
In trail mix also it is talking about less than.
Okay.
Okay. Let me check. Someone just pinged. Hello, Sophia, are you there? Hello, Sophia, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Sudhir.
Okay. Hi, Sophia. So, yeah, just to let you know that we are going through the validation rules,
Okay.
and
Sorry, I joined late because I was actually outside. Just came
no,
back home.
no problem. We all are trying to catch up, but that's fine. Uh, there is uh, the notes which we have gone through. I will share these notes in the channel later on. But yeah, we are going through the validation rules, what it is, and why do we need a validation rule, when the validation rule will fire, and things like that. Uh, but yeah, this is what we are doing, and we are going through this module, and we are trying to create a validation rule where uh, I was saying that uh, the conditions which we write in this text editor, this condition is for the invalid data. Most of the people take it wrong that this is for valid data. No, you have to write the validation rule or the conditions has to be for the invalid data. And now for the travel request, the requirement is that the user should not be able to, as of now, you see this travel approval record, the trip end date is 1st of June and trip start date is 8th of August, which is wrong. Okay, so we are trying to write a validation rule so that our we can enforce data quality and consistency across all the users whenever they try to enter a travel approval request. So we are going to create a validation rule to prevent the user from entering invalid or saving invalid data. And now this condition reflects the invalid data. Now we have written the conditions, and down below you can write a meaningful user friendly message so that based on the validation which will prevent the invalid data, the user can take corrective actions based on the message which you display. So you can write something like uh, please, or I can take the from here, trip end date must be greater than or equals to start date. Okay, and now you can throw the message either on the top of the page or to a specific field. So here we are focusing on the end date. So you select a field and which field you are validating upon, right? So trip end date and save it. Let me add it. Okay, now my validation rule is active, right? So let's go back to this same record and try to edit and save. Now it will stop us. Okay, so we are getting this error message which we have configured on the field which we have configured, right? So this is our location. We are throwing this message. Trip end date must be greater than or equals to start date. So user will come to know, oh, okay, the user has incorrectly entered the data, and the user can make corrective actions. Okay, and now if I save it, the user is now able to save the accurate data. Okay, even if I try to enter 8th of August, right? Because the end date should be greater than or equals to it will work. But if I try to give end date in the past or less than the start date, okay, so it's throwing an error. So this is the use of validation rule to enforce data quality, data consistencies or data completeness, right? Or even the data formatting. Let's say you have a email address or a phone number. So you wanted to enforce some kind of, the user should be able to enter email address in a specific format, right? Or the email address should have a specific domain name, right? Something like that. So that kind of validations also you can enforce using validation rules. So the questions you will get couple of questions in the exam on the validation rule as well. And wherever you see the term like enforcing data quality, data consistencies, data completeness, data formatting, I wanted to prevent user from entering invalid data, or you wanted to make sure valid data is entered, always go for validation rules. There are other ways as well to enforce validation rule, but the first approach would be to go for point and click validation rules. Okay. Any questions on this?
So Deep, I did have some issues in when I did this trail.
Okay.
I think I did send that message to you, but I didn't get any sort of response for you from you.
Okay. I'm going to
Um,
check. Let me
it's
know.
quite
Is this the one?
yeah, that's the one.
This is which
That's
module?
but we can do this later. We can do this.
Okay.
I think it's around the validation as well. But
Okay.
we can do that later. I just wanted to sort of bring that to your attention
Okay.
and
Yeah. Yeah. No problem. This is in my attention, so that's good.
okay.
And this
Okay.
relates to battle station, right?
Yes,
Battle station.
yes.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. Um, but all of you, how do you find validation rule now? Are you comfortable with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now in the validation, right? This was a very simple validation rule. Just to help you understand that you can scale it or increase the complexity of it. So there are, if I edit it right, this is very simple using just the fields. But on the right hand side, you see a lot of functions, right? You can use these functions to enforce a lot more complex validation rules. And just to help you understand with one other context, okay. So our context is that, and eSpeakVal is a function which is very frequently used if you work as a Salesforce admin. Um, so our requirement is that you as an end user, right? At the moment you see on the record, I'm able to, I as an end user, okay, I'm able to use submitted, I'm able to use approved. So I'm able to assign all values here, right? But I as an end user, okay, should be able to only save the record in new status, okay? Once it goes to looking at the pick list values, right, it looks like there would be some approval process on this. So other values like pending approval, approved, rejected, right, or submitted, looks like they belongs to the approval, different stages of approval process. But the values like new and draft, they are, more end users, specific values. Okay. So I as an end user should be able to enter or save a travel approval records with new or draft value. If I select, if I try to save the data with other values, the system should prevent me from entering. These values should be automatically updated using some kind of other automations rules, which we'll see in the later sessions, like workflow rules or process builder, or even approval process. Okay. So for now our requirement, and there are other ways to restrict these values, but we are not going into that. For now our use case is that from this pick list values, the end user should be able to save the record with new or draft value only. Okay, that's our with new or this is our our use case. Okay, this is not in the module, but I just uh, did a hypothetical use case so that we understand the meaning of speak well, or we understand how to use the functions if we have a complex business use case. Okay, now one thing I said that when you have to work with the automation tools like workflow validations, formula field, um, process builder, you need to know the data model first. You need to know on which object you are building these features, and you also need to know what are the relationship with other objects. Okay, now again we go back to our object, which is travel approval. So the very first question which you will ask is that what is the object where you have to build this feature upon. So we know that this is the travel approval record for which we have to build the validation rules. So we go to validation rules on the object, click on new. Okay, now let me add some descriptions, give it a meaningful name. Okay, now this box is for invalid error condition, sorry, error condition, right, or invalid conditions. So our use case is, so you do some kind of brainstorming first. Our use case is that status is always required. If you see right now, I can save status with none value as well. Okay, so my business use case says that make the status field required. Okay, now it is required, so user have to fill any one of the values, right? Now in addition to that, our additional use case is that when the user select any other value, any value other than new or draft, the user should be restricted. Okay, now let's try to think. We now you try to understand what is the type, data type of this field. So this is pick list, right? So for pick list, there are some supported functions. Okay, one of the function is called espeakval. So if you go to espeakval in the list, well, you will see that this is the function, and down below you can see the syntax. So it accepts two parameters. One is which pick list field you are referring to. Okay, and other is so it checks whether the value of a pick list field is equals to the string literal. So it refers to this pick list field, the one which we will configure. And if the value of that pick list field is equals to the value which we configure in the second parameter. Okay, so you make selections to your function and click on insert selected function. It will insert the syntax in the editor here. Now our, which is our pick list field, it is status, right? So simply firstly add, so we are on object, and now within the object we see all the fields. So find your status and click on insert. So we got our field here, which is fine. And now if So I'm going to break this validation rule in two parts first. First one is to make the status as required, and then later we'll see how to work out the additional condition, which is this. Okay. So if the pick list value of a status field is blank, it means this is my error condition. So if the user try to save the travel approval record where the status pick list value is blank, it means it is my error condition. So it means it will always throw an error whenever the status pick list value is blank, because I'm my use case is to make it required. Okay. So let's throw a message here like status is required and throw it on the status field. Okay, save it. So I have broken into two parts. First is to see how we can make it mandatory. Now if I try to save it with blank, with none means blank, basically I should be getting a message, right? Because of the validation rule. So our validation, as per the validation rule, which says that if the pick list value of status field is blank, this is our error condition, and it is true, right? In this case it is true, it is blank. So it means it is, if it is true, it means it is invalid data, and hence Salesforce will throw the message which we have configured here, which makes sense. All of you got it?
Yeah.
Yes, Sudhir.
Now
Yeah.
our next criteria is, now we'll work on the additional criteria. So we are, what we are doing, we are breaking into bits and pieces so that it is clear for us to understand. Now let's work on the additional things. um okay, now before that I'm trying to understand one other thing here. In this operator, right, or I'm going to use AND operator here, AND functions. Why we are going to use AND, I will explain it. So AND is a logical AND operator. Okay, when I say logical, you might have studied truth table in your college or in your previous life. Okay, so AND may take multiple expressions, and all these are multiple arguments, multiple parameters, and it will return true if all are true. It will return false if if one of them is false. Okay, so our condition is that, okay, let me break it. So first one is for mandatory. If our pick list value is what, new, or so if our selected pick list value is new and I apply a not operator here. So just think about it. If the, so the inner condition, which is this, it says that the pick list value of the status field is new, but we have to provide the error condition here. So error condition is what? If the pick list value is not new, right? So to make it not, I have applied not here. So you know, so if it is not new, it means it is invalid, right? You got this one.
Yes, Sudhir, getting it.
Yes. Yes.
Similarly, so the intention is that you always, whatever condition you write, that condition has to be for the error condition. If I remove this, right, this is my valid, right? The user should be able to enter or save the data with new value. But my error condition is opposite of it. So if I need a opposite of some condition, it means you have to apply not. Okay, this is my second condition. Okay, and now the third condition is like if it is not draft, right? Now I combine all the conditions together. So if it is blank, throw an error, or if it is not new, throw an error, or if it is not draft, throw an error. DRAFT draft. So there is OR operator, which is this, 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 or this. So if any one of them is true, right, throw a message. Yeah, makes sense.
Yes, Sudhir.
So Sudeep, does that mean you can, Sudeep,
Yeah,
Sudeep,
yeah.
so does that mean you can have multiple validation, multiple conditions inside the insert field?
Yes.
Okay.
Now you have to work it out. Okay. Um, the use case, the business use case which you will be provided, you have to do brainstorming. Like if you can have all the validations within a single validations rules, or you have to create multiple validations. It depends on the different context. But you can have multiple criteria within the same validation rules. If you are able to accommodate as much criteria within the single validation rule, that's fine. Otherwise, you can create multiple validations rules also. So all the validations rules will be executed on that object before a record of that type of object is saved in the database.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now our error message is much more broad. So status is required and user can enter only new or draft. So if the status is blank, or if the pick list value is not new, or if the pick list value in the status is not draft, throw a message. So if any one of them is true, it means the data is invalid. Save it. Let's verify this. Let's try to save. Okay. So here I am presenting users to a much more a broader validation message. So if you would like, you can create multiple validations rules. But why to create multiple if you can accommodate into one single? So it's your job to see if you can accommodate into one validations rules. If not, you can have multiples as well. So it says that firstly the status is required. So you have to apply some kind of data here, right? So and also it says that user can enter or you can enter only new or draft value. So let's try to see if I'm able to save the data, the record with new value or not, which is not allowing us to save. It means our validation rule is wrong. Okay. If we try to see the draft, again, it is wrong. If I try to save it with submitted, so it is not allowing us to save. It means whatever we have written, there is something wrong. Okay. So let's try to understand what is that something which is wrongly configured or which we have understood in a wrong way at first place. So let's go back to our validation rule and try to understand. Okay. Anyone, can you figure it out? You can shout out. Um, So first one is that
Should we
yeah, say it.
should we enter function between these two operators like we have used operator between these two validation rule?
Mm-hmm.
Should we use function either than operator?
Okay. So you are saying instead of this, use or function, or function.
Yes.
Those two lines are nothing but or, right?
Yeah. They are all
Actually,
also.
Yeah,
that is an
it does.
operator.
Yeah.
Actually, that is an operator.
Yeah, both have the same function. But I mean, both does the same operation. Either you use or this one.
I was saying about that operator and the function.
Yeah, I got your point. So you are asking us to use this, right, instead of operator, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are different ways to write. Um, Either you use uh, condition one or condition two or condition three, or you can use or operator and put it all the condition, and here, okay, both are similar, same. Okay, so let's try to find out what's the problem.
Comma
The
at the end of validation rule.
mhm.
Comma could be the at the end of validation rule.
Say it louder, Rosan.
Comma.
Comma.
Breaking the validation rule. Yes.
No, this is fine. So eSpeak val has two parameters. First one is field, and other one is the value which we are comparing this field with. So okay, let's try to discuss. So this box contains invalid data condition. Okay, so what are our invalid data? If the status is blank, then it is invalid. And
Yes. New and the draft.
it is this, and any one of this. Okay, so I have, so if the status is blank and or, no, both are similar.
I think and works if the status is blank uh and these two conditions, the down two.
Mhm. Okay, let me, if this is blank, this is also right. The other is, okay, and if it is not blank and if it is any one of, if it is not any one of this. Okay, now let's come back. If it is submitted, save. If it is blank, error. If it is new, save. If it is draft,
Again, error.
again there is some problem. So let me copy this and put it into Notepad++, because here we can have indentation correctly. Yes, if it is blank. I'm going to stop. Okay, so here what we have done, we have worked on a bit uh, complex validation rule
Can
than
we check
last time.
syntax? Can we check syntax?
Now it's working.
It's
It's working
worse.
fine. It's working fine now. So our condition is, let me add proper indentation. Okay, so check it out. Our first condition is this, first invalid condition. So if the status is blank, throw a message, right? So this is for blank.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
or now this is one combined condition. You see, this starts from this and ends with this. Now within this, now the other condition is that if we are filling some value, right? So what is that? If we are filling something, it means if the pick list value of the status is not blank, which is this, right? If it is not blank, and if it is not new, and if it is not
Not
in
draft.
draft,
Draft.
right? So all of them has to be true. I mean, all of them has to be false. All of them has to be true for the invalid data, right? It is not blank, it is not draft, and it is not new. Then it becomes invalid data. Okay, you got it. Just think about it.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we already
Yes.
wrote
Got it.
blank once on the top first line, right?
Yeah, this is for
Then what
blank
is the
case.
use of writing again here?
This is
I did
this
not
is
get this.
so there are two conditions. One is that it should not be blank, fine, which is
Yes.
achieved from this. Other is that if it is not blank, then what values we are allowing the user to enter. So this condition is for the case where it is not blank. But and again, if it is not blank, there can be multiple values, right? The user can enter. But we are throwing the message when it is not new and when it is not draft. All other values, sorry, we are throwing this message when it is not new and when it is not draft. It means if the status is submitted pending approval or approved or rejected, then it will throw a message. It will, this will be true then. Let's try to work it out. uh, Check it out. First one is blank. So first, this is one condition, right? And this whole is one combined condition. So let's look on to condition one. So if any one is true, it means the error message will come. So as per the first condition, this is blank, it means it is true. If I try to save it, it says that status is required, right? Now out of, so we can enter 1 2 3 4 5 6 values, right? So if I enter new, okay, in this case the status is not blank, right? Which is this is not blank, okay? And if the status is not new, status is new, right? So our condition is not new. It means not new is false here, right? It is new actually. You got it? This is new, but our condition is that not new. Although it is not blank, but as per the second condition, this is
Not new.
not new. Not new is means other values which are submitted. This is not new, right? Pending approval is not new. Approved is not new. It means this is true, right? And also it is not draft. Rejected is not new and not draft.
Draft.
Submitted is not new. Submitted is not blank, not new and not draft. All the three conditions are being true if it is being filled. Approved is, in this case, status is not blank, it is not new, and it is not draft. Hence it is true, hence you will get a message through error message. Okay.
Okay,
If you
yeah,
try to
got it.
enter new, it is not blank, but it is new, right?
Mm.
It means our condition becomes false. It means we'll not get error message. So we know that we will get error message only when the condition is true. The final condition is true. I'm not talking about one individual condition. The final return from this whole condition should be either true or false. So if it is true, then the validation rule will fire. If it is false, then validation rule will not fire. So you got this point, the not new, not draft, and not blank thing.
Yes, Sudhir.
Either you can make it two separate validations rule or you can combine into one, but that's how it is. I will share this in the here as well. And let me take a screenshot of it. Okay. And we use each peak value with pick list value only. Okay. If it is not pick list value, you don't have to use that. There are other functions. If you click on help on this function, it will open up a Salesforce knowledge article or help and training guide, and there you can go deep into to understand. Or even if you start working on validation rule or workflow rules or any other automation tools, you can use the functions from here. So this will be your reference guide, and you can, if your field which you are working with is date field or some kind of number field or text field or pick list field, you will get a lot of uh, it's not a problem. I have that link here. And I will share this notes as well. Just if you and just try to go and recap this thing. Okay, try to do this condition on your own. If something is not clear, write the condition and you validate the condition, inserting the data, saving the data, making modifications, and then you'll understand slowly that okay, this is how you have to use. Okay. Oh man, it's taking time. Okay, yeah, here it is. So here you will see that math, uh, there are operators for math, logical and text operators, then date functions, if your field is date or date time, logical functions, math functions, any mathematical formulas, text functions, summary and advanced function you can go through and understand and how to use it. Okay. Any questions or confusion from whatever we discussed here in validation rule?
No.
But the point is, did you understand something or have more clarity than what you used to have in the past or previously?
Yes, Sudhir.
Okay. With that, I think we can wrap up the session for today. Yeah, and then we'll move further with the next validation rule. Sorry, with the next automation tool, which is where is it?
Like formula field.
Which is, yeah, roll up summary field and formula fields. Okay.
Okay.
Abbas, any questions?
Nothing. Not really. I think I'm just waiting for us to get to battle station trail, and then I've got a few questions around there as well. So I'll probably hold my questions till we get there.
Okay, but yeah, that's fine. But in terms of
When you,
validation rule,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, validation. Yeah, I do understand that now. I mean, I'll definitely go through the videos again. But in terms of the understanding is there now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, but in terms of why do we need it, what is the structure of a validation rule, right? They are to some extent are clear, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you identify the object, give it a name, some description. Then here you provide conditions for invalid data. You can use functions as well, use some operators, and you can display some error message that will throw up when the condition becomes true. And where do you want to display that message, top of the page or to that specific field, and you can save it. So that's the structure of a validation rule. And when it is fired, whenever you try to save the record in the system, what do you mean by saving a record? It means whenever you insert or update the record in the database. And why do we do it? To enforce data quality, or have some proper formatting in terms of like length of a phone field or email format or some other conditions which you wanted to enforce. You can use validations rules. Okay, then if you don't have any other questions, then we can close the session for today.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudu.
Yeah, thanks, Sudhir.
Thanks, Abbas. Thanks, Sophia. Thanks,
So
Roshan.
next week we will be having at
Yeah,
8:30.
yeah, same
Sorry,
timing, same
8:30.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
same
Okay,
timing.
same
Yeah,
time.
same timing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye. Abbas, you all can drop off, but Abbas, if you have time, we can discuss on your
Yes.
thing.
Yes, please. Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye bye. Okay, so coming back to the
Yeah,
question.
just a quick one here. I
Mhm.
just wanna. I mean, I've got a job which is around Salesforce.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm starting on Monday. I'm on Tuesday. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which is good. Which is good.
Oh, wow. And does this Empowerforce play any role in that?
Yeah, definitely, of course, because if it's not Empowerforce, I wouldn't have interest in Salesforce. So yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah. May I ask you or request you to write some testimonials about it once you start your
Yeah,
job
yeah, yeah. I would do. I would do.
on LinkedIn? Yeah, maybe, because these
I
are the
would.
small success stories that help us to keep on doing something like this.
Yes, yeah. I'll definitely do. I'll definitely
Okay.
do. Um,
Now, okay.
so the
Now on your
question,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, on this trailhead here, which is around Battle Station. If you go back to my initial,
Okay,
um,
I'm stopping recordings.